Hi there, everyone. This is Kindra Adair, and I am so excited to be with you. This is different than what we expected, but I think it's going to be just as impactful, if not more, because now you have an opportunity to hear all of the classes that you wanted to and not have to pick and choose. So, welcome to my class. The name of my class is called Liberating Yourself from Past Negative Emotions. And so we're going to talk a lot about that and talk about emotions in general and how we can actually use them for our good instead of having them run our lives. So to start out, I just want to invite you to sit back and relax. Doesn't it just feel amazing to be sitting wherever you're sitting right now and just feeling the peace and the calm that is yours for the taking? Good. You've probably heard some things. If I'm not the first class presentation that you listen to, you've probably already heard some things that resonate with you and make you think, yeah, I want to do that in my life or change that in my life. I have confidence that what I also share with you today will bring you more clarity and focus into your life and help you decide even more about what you want to change and how you want to do that. So let's start. First, let's just take a deep breath, okay? In through your nose and out through your mouth. Are you ready? Let's do it together. That felt so good. Let's do it again. Good. One more. Great. Okay. So as I was starting to get ready for this conference, I was talking to a good friend who also happens to be my cousin. And I told her, hey, I'm speaking at this conference, the Energy Healing Conference. And she said, wow, you've come a long way. And she's right, because my background is that I am a nurse. I became a registered nurse in 2000, so it's been 20 years since I got my license. And it's still active, but she actually was the one that introduced me to essential oils 7 years ago. Now, I wasn't looking for anything. I was happy being a nurse. I became a nurse because I wanted to help people and I wanted to make a difference. And however, I did see that there were major gaps in our healthcare system. And so when she introduced me to essential oils, I was flabbergasted at what I learned about them and the possibilities that they offered. So I quit working as a nurse, I've kept my license active, and I started doing an essential oil business, which I've been doing for, like I said, 7 years, and I love essential oils. But there were still gaps in essential oils too, that people weren't getting all the way better. And so I was just curious what else was out there. Now, when she introduced me to essential oils, it did open my mind to a whole new world of other modalities that were natural. And I started looking a lot into nutrition and into energy work. She's the one that introduced me to energy work. I didn't even know it existed. You guys, I have come a long way. Here I am speaking at this conference, and I didn't even know what energy work was 7 years ago. So anyway, so I was, I was one of those people that thought that this stuff was foo-foo, and that the people that did it were a little bit strange. And now I'm one of them, and I wholly embrace it. So if you are one of those, if you or you know somebody were one of those people who thought that this kind of stuff wasn't legit, I'm so sorry. And I have repented, and I absolutely embrace this work, and I love it so much. So fast forward. A little over a year ago, I was introduced to NLP. And I didn't know, again, just like essential oils found me, I wasn't looking for it. But after I found it, I realized I was looking for it. And NLP stands for neurolinguistic programming. which basically means using your thoughts and your words to get the results you want. Learning the language of the unconscious mind to get the life you want. And so I dived right into that, and it's because it filled in the rest of those gaps that were missing. So that's my background, and that's why I'm here today. And I have absolutely loved NLP so much that I became a trainer in it, not just a coach. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. So I want to tell you a funny story. When I was at my son's, he's in musical theater, he's 8. He was doing a performance, and so we were watching all the other performers as well. And there was this group of 3-year-old girls who were doing a dance to the song "Put on a Happy Face," and it was so cute. And they're getting in and out of their little flower pots and everything. Anyway, it was adorable. But then about halfway through, and in the corner of my eye, I could see this little girl on the end of the stage just sobbing. She was up there, man, though. She didn't go off the stage. She was there, but she was really, really sad. And she was just crying her little eyes out. And then every once in a while, she'd actually pull herself together and she'd go and do some of the steps. And then she would just stand in the new place and keep crying. And then she would pull herself together again and go to another place. And then she would start crying again. Anyway, it was really funny, sad, right? So anyway, so the girls get to the chorus, and the chorus is "Put on a happy face," and they all go like this, and then putting on a happy face, put on a happy face, and she's going like this. Like, she's so sad, but she's trying to be happy. And it was so funny. And it just hit me like, whoa, this is so like our lives sometimes, we get to, sometimes emotions totally get in the way of what we're trying to do. So I want to ask you, have you ever had a time in your life where you were like committed? Okay, I am changing this about my relationship or my career or my health. I'm totally doing it. And you're going to show up in a new way in your life in whatever area you're focusing on. And you're doing good for a few days, maybe even a couple weeks. And then all of a sudden you're like back into your old patterns and old emotions and old habits. And it's just not sticking. And you're like, see, why do I even make goals? Because I just keep going to the same old pattern. Well, there's a reason. There's a reason that those are there, and there's a reason that that's happening, and it can totally change. I have experienced this as well. Obviously, we all have. I was married once before I married my wonderful husband. Now I had another marriage. I had my first marriage. And from the night of my wedding, I wondered if I had made a mistake. And that was because of emotional abuse that began to happen pretty much right away. It's difficult for me to even say emotional abuse because I don't consider myself a victim, and I never did. But I knew what was happening at the same time. I was aware. But the fact was that it was happening, and it did happen. And so after 2 years, I chose to end that marriage. And I mean, I did the best I could when I was in that marriage. I just like all of us, we do the best that we can with the resources that we have available to us. And I was doing that. And almost 2 years after my divorce, I met my now current husband, and we've been married for almost 11 years. In June, it'll be 11 years. And it's been a great marriage, and I'm so grateful for him. We do have our challenges, and we have had our challenges. And some of those challenges were with intimacy, which stemmed from my first marriage. And when I got introduced to NLP, I wondered, could NLP actually help me in this area of my life? I also have a son. I mentioned him earlier, son Bowen. He is 8, almost 9. And when he was about 3, I cut his nails, because a good mom does that for their kids when they get too long and nasty, right? And so I trimmed his nails, and he was just having to come apart like inconsolable for over 30 minutes. And I could not figure it out because he wasn't able to really communicate with me and tell me what was going on. I finally figured out that he was using his index finger to scratch the corner of his blanket, a certain corner of his blanket, mind you. And there was a special sensation that was happening with that, on his finger. And so when I cut his nail, it completely changed that sensation. I had no idea this was going on with him. He had that blanket since he was an infant. Anyway, so I figured it out. But I figured, you know what, it'll be okay. Next time we'll be fine. No. It went on and on and on for years. We got to the point where he would only let me cut all of these nails, but not these ones. And that was our deal. I just allowed those to break off. He was okay if they broke off, but I couldn't clip them. So, but regardless, just talking about getting his nails clipped threw him into a tailspin, and he would cry. And it was like, what do I do with this? You know, this is crazy. It's just hygienic. So anyway, so fast forward, last May, I took my first NLP training, and I thought, gosh, I wonder if NLP could help him with this, help him get over that emotion that's so attached to getting his nails clipped. And I also run a business from home, like I said, an essential oil business, and now also an NLP business. And I have had guilt over the years because I also homeschool. And so if I wasn't giving my son like all of my attention, I felt guilty. Or sometimes I felt like my team wasn't pulling their weight, and I'd get frustrated. Or I felt like I should be further along in life, and I'd be angry. Or what else? I mean, fear, right? There were things I knew I needed to do in my business that would grow my business, but I was so afraid of rejection that I didn't act on those things. And so there was that emotion. Fear is huge in our lives. By the way, we are only born with two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noise. Those are both fears that we need to stay safe. The rest of them have all been learned. And that took a lot of work for us to learn all those fears, did it not? It would be wonderful to just realize that and use a technique, which I use, to get rid of fear. That's why I'm here talking to you right now. Okay, how about this? Maybe this has been you as well. I used to say, I'm having a bad day, because, I mean, that's normal, right? We're all entitled to have a bad day. I got taught that, like, it's okay to have a bad day once in a while, you know? And so I would have bad days, and sometimes, and I mean, we're not talking like a minute or 5 minutes or an hour or even 2 hours. We're talking a whole day. And to make sure I remembered that I was having a bad day, I would make sure I was annoyed with everybody who came around and everything. And just, I made sure I felt it. I was having a bad day, and I made sure I kept feeling those negative emotions as much as I needed to. And I didn't stop feeling them until I was good and ready. Sometimes those days would turn into more than one day. Sometimes I would feel sad about something or nothing. I just felt sad. And you know, here's the thing. Truth be told, I didn't know that I had a choice to feel something different, because feelings are real, you know? I felt those things. It wasn't like I was making it up, right? Like, I know how I felt. I really did feel those things. Here's the thing. I was doing the best. Again, I was doing the best with the resources that I had available to me. Resources meaning abilities inside of myself. I didn't even know I had more resources to do different, to be different. But now that I know that, when I know better, I do better. And so I do. And so can you. I've learned some absolutely fascinating things about emotions that I'd like to share with you today. Because most of you are here watching my class or my presentation because you are curious about how to heal from past emotions or even deal with present emotions. So first of all, let's talk about that. Emotions are actually events that are they're connected to the events in our lives, okay? It's important to understand here that the unconscious mind only lives in the present. So when we feel emotions from the past, it doesn't even know the difference if it's happening right now again. It doesn't know the difference. And it also doesn't know the difference between if something's going to happen in the future. Everything is in the present. So when we understand that concept, it makes a whole lot of difference in how we set goals, right? And reach and think about reaching goals. It does. So if we keep reliving an event, especially a highly charged emotional one, we aren't actually getting past it, like is often believed in traditional talk therapy. Now, talk therapy may have a place sometimes. I have personally benefited from it. In my first marriage, I did talk to a therapist, and I felt like it helped to talk to somebody, more like venting to someone who was a neutral party in my situation, because I didn't want to go, blabbing my stuff to my friends and family. And so, but like I said, it was mostly venting for me. And venting isn't healing. It's not. I would relive the things that my ex-husband would say or do, and I was right back in it again. And I was feeling those emotions, and I was feeling anger, and I was feeling frustrated, and I was feeling sad, and I was feeling stuck, and all of the things. And it just, I thought it helped me in the moment to talk about it and get it off my chest. But man, in the long run, it wasn't actually helping me heal from the inside, which is where all healing takes place. Years later, after I was married to my second husband, my husband now, is going to be my final husband too. I used group therapy after the birth of our daughter, who was stillborn. She was 34 weeks and had trisomy 18. And so I was a part of a group of what we called angel moms, and we were a bunch of moms who had all lost babies. And so it was helpful for me in those first few weeks and months to be in a community and know I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person who had experienced this. And so we got together once a month and shared our stories and talked about our feelings and how things were happening in our lives currently and all of that. And it was really helpful. But after a while, that group got bigger and bigger, actually pretty quickly. And it was interesting to me that it did get big so quick. I realized how many people actually were dealing with this. But regardless, every month that we would get together, in order for these new moms to get to know us who had already been in the group for a while, we were all sharing our stories every month, sharing the same story and reliving it. And after about 6 months, I started to feel like, you know what, this isn't helping me move forward like I want to. I want to heal and I want to move forward, and this is keeping me stuck. So even though it was helpful for a while, it didn't help me after a while. In short, talk therapy isn't the long-term solution in my experience, and other people that I've talked to as well. Because in order to truly heal, we have to change from the inside. We are the ones doing the work. We are the ones who have the answers to our own problems inside of us. No one else on the outside of us really does know what our solution is. And our solutions are very unique and individual to each of us. So we must learn how to master our emotions and learn the language of the unconscious mind, because they are intimately connected. First and foremost, emotions are energy in motion. The chemicals that make up emotions are always changing and moving. Neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine are actually, they've discovered that they're in every single cell of our bodies. They aren't in just the brain, which used to be the belief. No, they've discovered that they're everywhere, and they're changing all the time, like second to second. So it made me start to think, what about chemical imbalances in the brain? or in people that we so often just talk about like it's a real thing. So I started researching it more, and I was like, I wonder how someone actually knows whether or not they have a chemical imbalance. Like, how do doctors determine that? And oh my gosh, everything I found was the answer is, I'll tell you the answer. The answer is there is no test. There never has been, because it's impossible to take a level of these neurotransmitters that are moving from second to second, and for that test to be reliable. So how are people diagnosed with depression? You know, is it really depression? I mean, how do we know? Clearly, people are dealing with this, and I live in the state of Utah, where it's you know, we're considered one of the highest states of people who are on an antidepressant. And so, what is going on here? You know. In Dr. Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief, he said this. In an article written in 2002 titled, The Emperor's New Drugs, it was published in the American Psychological Association's Prevention and Treatment magazine. It was by psychology professor Irving Kirsch. He found that 80% of the effective antidepressants, as measured in clinical trials, could be attributed to the placebo effect. The data showed that in more than half of the clinical trials for the 6 leading antidepressants, the drugs did not outperform the placebo. He goes on to say, another interesting fact about the effectiveness of antidepressants is that they have performed better and better in clinical trials over the years, suggesting that their placebo effects are in part due to savvy marketing. The more the miracle of antidepressants was touted in the media and advertisements, the more effective they became. Beliefs are contagious. We now live in a culture where people believe that antidepressants work, and so they do, end quote. So what is depression and how is it diagnosed? Well, again, I was doing some research on this because I couldn't even remember from my nursing career. I just assumed that when people were on antidepressants that there was a pretty, you know, good reason for them to be on it and a system to make sure that it was the right thing for them and all this. Well, okay, so I started studying this, researching this, and I was talking to people who have actually been on some of these drugs, and I asked them, how were you diagnosed? And I've read about it and I've researched it also online and things. And I found out that it's diagnosed because through a questionnaire, through a whole bunch of questions, maybe depending on the questions the doctor uses, it could be as little as 17 questions up to 30. And then they rate your answers, and yeah. And when I looked at some of those questions, I was like, whoa, those are pretty suggestible. They're highly suggestive, I should say, meaning that if someone who wasn't trained in how the unconscious mind worked, and they accepted this these questions from this doctor as, oh, this is going to help me know about myself, right? Forgetting that we have the answers inside of us and totally trusting in someone else. And there are people out there who know a lot more than me, believe me, I get that. We just have to look closer at what the bigger picture is going on here. So anyway, if someone read some of these questions with, and those questions went into their unconscious mind, which is where we have all of our learning and where all learning happens. And they didn't have a filter to say, wait, I can think about this and not take this as as my truth, as my belief, then they could really start to wonder about, you know, themselves and if it's true for them. So here's the thing. As a patient, let me back up a little bit. I have to ask myself that if a questionnaire is how we're finding out if people should be taking these powerful mind-altering drugs, is that a safe, reliable way to put people on these mind-altering drugs? And I think everyone should ask ourselves that. Because some of those questions, I think all of us would answer yes to at any given time in our lives. Yet by the next day, we might not feel the same way. Who knows? So it's just something to think about. And as a patient, for example, how does it feel to be told by someone in authority that you have depression or you have anxiety? My bet, and again, I've talked to people, so I think my bet is right, is that when someone tells, if someone tells somebody this is what you have, and they choose to believe that, they will start to have even more symptoms of depression and anxiety. Yeah. And that is because they chose to believe it unconsciously and probably consciously as well. And they probably felt like they didn't have a choice. I used to believe that I didn't have a choice when I felt limiting emotions. And let me say right now that that is false. Nobody is a certain way for the rest of their lives, unless they choose to be. We all have free will to do with whatever we please. Some people choose to feel that they don't have a choice, and some people choose to feel that they do. So how are we going to use our free will? How are we going to use our power of choice? Think about that. Does it kind of blow your mind open for a minute? If it does, good. Let it just flow wide open. It's fun. It's fun to think about these things. So what in the world is really going on? Well, emotions are simply chemical feedback about our life experiences. When we react to an external event with an emotion, the internal chemistry signals to our genes to turn either on or off. When we react the same way, over and over again, we form a thinking and feeling loop. We are thinking and feeling, then thinking over and over again until it forms a habit. In the psychology world, this is called a gestalt. It's when the mind takes all the memories to form a global whole with self-organizing tendencies. So imagine a pearl necklace. Each time we feel sadness, another pearl is added to our string of sadness pearls. If you add enough of them, it could be labeled depression. This is a gestalt. Same thing with anger, fear, hurt, and guilt. Here's another example. When we continually feel guilty about something because we keep thinking about it, again, there's that thinking and feeling loop. We think about it, and then we feel it. We think about it, and then we feel it. The emotion of guilt gets stronger and stronger. Guilt is such a useless emotion, by the way. It serves only one purpose, to help us self-correct. But even then, I have been guilty of holding on to that guilt long after the self-correction happened. Wouldn't it feel great to get rid of it and to understand how we can actually feel good all the time? It would be, wouldn't it? It's awesome. Our mind creates pathways to easily access memories that are organized in a certain way. Our mind will generalize all of the anger memories together, or the sadness memories, or whatever emotion, including positive ones as well. Compare it to how we store or organize files on our computer. Our mind does the same thing with our memories. So, is it possible that something as big as depression and anxiety are simply a habit of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking? In simple terms, yes. In NLP, we call this a program, and programs can be changed. Where does our programming come from? Well, from the ages of 0 to 7, we are living in a hypnotic state. So it's also called the imprint period, if you've heard of that. That was something I learned about in school. It's pretty common knowledge. The imprint period is from the ages of 0 to 7, and It's called that because we are literally living in this hypnotic state where everything around us is being imprinted on us. Other people's beliefs and values and things that, and we just accept it from our parents and our family members, those around us, teachers. I mean, there's so many influences, right? Media, there's so much coming at us. And so we are just, it's imprinting on us, good or bad. And we can't, because we're not filtering it yet, because our conscious mind hasn't been engaged. And so we don't even know what we believe yet. So we're just like, oh, okay. And we accept it as truth, when in reality, a lot of it is not truth. It's false, especially beliefs about ourselves and our world around us and what is possible. So we're downloading all of this data. Then it's important to understand that because we have so much information coming at us, 11 million bits per second, whoa, that is a lot. So our minds can only process 26 bits per second. In order for our minds to make all of this information coming at us manageable, it will delete, distort, and generalize according to our beliefs and our values. That's why two people can be at the same event and have very different memories of it. Unfortunately, much of what we downloaded in those early years is information that and beliefs and values that aren't true and that aren't real. We're basically living other people's lives because other people's beliefs and values got stuck on us. For example, let's say at age 3, you're at the store and you want to get something and your parent says, we don't have money for that. Well, now at age 3, you've downloaded the false belief, maybe, that what you want isn't attainable or that you can't afford it. So as an adult, your unconscious mind is making sure that this is your reality. And this is not a new discovery, by the way. The Jesuits have known this for hundreds of years. They actually said, give me the child until he is 7, and I'll give you the man. They understood that once programmed, that those programs would run in that child for the rest of his life. Pretty powerful stuff, right? Okay, now at age 7 or 8, we engage the conscious mind and we begin to determine what's real and what's not real. We form what's called a critical faculty. A critical faculty creates the separation in our mind between what's real and what's not, what's real, what's fantasy. And it's when kids start to wonder if Santa Claus is real or the Easter Bunny or some of these things. And ironically, I was exactly 8 years old when I started to put all this stuff together. Like, how is that even possible for this man to go all the way around the world in one night and eat everyone's cookies? And anyway, all that. So I questioned if Santa Claus is real at age 8. And I asked my parents and they're like, nope, he's not. So now I knew. After age 7, or is he real? I'm just going to say that. Anyway, just teasing. After age 7, we still get programmed, but we do have the ability to filter it better according to our beliefs and values, which we now have formed, or other people's values. But regardless, we have, like, I guess, a point where we can determine whether or not we want to believe that or not, okay? Another important time happens from the ages of 7 to 14. This is called the modeling period. So we are modeling those around us during this time. So if your parents or others close to you are modeling depression and anxiety, for example, then it's likely that you will pick up on those behaviors and create them in your own life. Same thing if they model positive emotions. Kids will pick up on how they are to react to life from their parents and their family members. Okay. So now that you get an idea of where our programming comes from, you'll understand that when it comes to neurological processing abilities, the unconscious mind is more than 1 million times more powerful than the conscious mind. So if the desires of the conscious mind conflict with the programs of the unconscious mind, which mind do you think will win out? Yeah, the unconscious mind every time. In other words, if those beliefs we unconsciously decided to believe from the ages of 0 to 7 don't jive with our conscious mind's goals, it's no wonder we are self-sabotaging ourselves from getting what we want. Since 95% of our daily behavior is run on programs and from our unconscious mind, this would make sense, wouldn't it? Why we're doing the same thing over and over again and wondering why we're not getting a different result. So I like this saying. You might want to write this one down. Our conscious mind is the goal setter, but it's our unconscious mind that's the goal getter. Our conscious mind and our unconscious mind are interdependent. The conscious mind is the creative mind. It can see into the future, review the past, or disconnect from the present when as it solves problems in our head. It holds our wishes, our desires, and our aspirations for our lives. It is the mind that conjures up positive thoughts. In contrast, the unconscious mind is primarily a bunch of stimulus response tapes derived from instincts and learned experiences. It is fundamentally habitual and will play the same behavioral responses over and over and over again. Okay? So that's why you can repeat the positive affirmation, any positive affirmation. For example, when maybe you're saying you're lovable, you're repeating that to yourself over and over and over again consciously, yet as a child you heard you were worthless. Well, then those messages that are programmed and will undermine your best conscious efforts to change your life. That's why positive affirmations alone do not work, at least not for long-term and lasting change. So it would seem like a good idea to understand how to use our unconscious mind, which is the supercomputer, right? It's what keeps everything going. It's going even when we're asleep. The unconscious mind is always on. Okay, here's an example from my own life about this. So over a year ago, I hired a coach who used NLP to help me with my business. I've had an essential oil business for 7 years, like I mentioned before, and I had been at the exact same spot in my business for about 4 years. I was stuck. I had the same income, I had the same monthly sales, I had the same rank, and the same everything. Nothing was changing, and I would go to, these leadership the gala in my business. It's called the gala, where people were recognized for their achievements, and I would see people walk the purple carpet, and they were higher ranks than me, and I was like, they just don't seem that different than me. What gives? Why am I still stuck? And what am I doing wrong? And so, I mean, I had tried, mind you, I hired other coaches in the past. I had done energy work, various energy work, because I knew, it's a lot of it's in your mind. I knew that. I got that now. And so I did that, and I hired, or I went to conferences, and I went to trainings, and I bought online programs. And I mean, I did so much. I've read tons and tons of books constantly. And yet I was still stuck. I was in the same place. So the one thing I hadn't tried was NLP, and I didn't even know what it was, like I mentioned before, that kind of found me. And it was actually through my business that it found me, which was a blessing. So I thought, well, this is something different, really different. And I had never tried anything like it before, and I was super intrigued by it. And it was more money than I had spent on anything else in my life, as far as for self-improvement and, investing in myself. It was a lot of money. And you know what? It was the best decision I ever made. I'm so grateful I took that leap of faith, because it was so worth it. I loved it so much that I got my practitioner level in NLP 5 months after I got coached. And then I went ahead 3 months later and got my master practitioner. And then I kept going, and 2 months after that, I went to Australia for 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks, left my kids and my husband at home, went to Australia, and I got my trainer's training level so that I could actually train people in this modality so that they can also coach people in NLP and timeline therapy and hypnosis. So let's go back to this idea of programming though. As part of my preparation for my coaching session, I was asked to read a certain book that dealt with beliefs around money. And so I was reading this book, and the book asked if the reader had ever heard some of the following phrases. Money is the root of all evil. Save your money for a rainy day. Filthy rich. You have to work hard to make money. Money doesn't grow on trees. There's never enough. And the infamous, we can't afford it. Well, all of those are programs. And you know what? I had heard every single one of them growing up, from my parents, from my family members. Pretty much everyone that I was surrounded by said these things like it was normal. And that's just the way life was. Well, no wonder I had this unconscious programming, you know? So to test it a little, while I was in the middle of reading my book, I hadn't been coached yet, but I was reading this book and I just loved it. It was like opening my mind in a whole new way. I went to my parents' home for dinner, and I wanted to ask my dad some questions about his beliefs around money growing up, because I knew that his parents had lived through the Depression era. And I wondered if that's kind of where this programming that I had started. So I asked him some questions, and he gave me some pretty typical answers that I thought, yeah, that makes sense, you know. But then at one point in the conversation, he said something that just, like, I had to control myself from to not have a massive reaction, because he said, I never met a millionaire that I liked. Whoa. For me, all of a sudden, all this stuff came together, because I always wanted and thought I needed the approval of my parents my entire life. And so no wonder I was sabotaging myself from earning more money, from becoming a millionaire, whatever. I had this programming that if I was going to be accepted by my parents, I needed their approval. And if he didn't approve of millionaires, whoa, there you go. Thank goodness I woke up. Thank goodness I saw this for what it was now. I had become consciously aware now of my unconscious programming, and now I could change it. And I have changed it. And I also changed the belief that I needed my parents' approval to be accepted by them. It's made a world of difference in my life, and I'm so grateful for it. Okay, so how are we programmed after age 7? It's still through our unconscious mind, because again, I said earlier, that is where all learning takes place, all learning. So, and it's done when we are in a state of hypnosis. So, how many of you have been hypnotized before? How many of you think you can't be hypnotized? What if I told you that you've all been hypnotized thousands, if not millions of times in your life, and that we all go in and out of trance every day? Would that surprise you? It totally surprised me when I learned this. Here's the thing, you just weren't aware that that's what you were experiencing, was trance. But let me give you some examples so you can understand how easy it is. So have any of you been so focused on watching a movie or a TV show that you couldn't hear someone trying to get your attention? It's because you were in a trance. You were totally focused. You were aware of what you were focusing on, right? You were just so in this trance that it didn't matter anything else that was happening around you. Okay. Movies and TV shows are actually really great too, because when you go to a movie like Superman or any of those Marvel movies, it's a time where we're in trance, which means that our critical faculty, remember I talked about that before, about what's real and what's fantasy, that separation in our mind, well, that opens up when we go to a movie, or wherever we're in trance, mind you. But at a movie, it's an easy example, because then when that critical faculty is opened up and we're watching something like Superman flying through the air and doing all these things that we wouldn't normally consider possible, well, suddenly we're like, that's awesome. Because it wouldn't be very fun to watch a movie if we're just like, oh, that's so not real. Like, nobody can fly. Nobody can do any of those things. Well, how boring would it be to watch movies if that's what we were thinking the whole time? It's way more fun to watch a movie going, oh my gosh, that's amazing. He just did that. Did you see that? You know, it's way more fun, right? So when our critical faculty is open, anything is possible in our minds. So the key is to train our minds to open up at will like that and imagine anything for our lives in the future. And when we do that, like I said, our conscious mind only lives our unconscious mind only lives in the present. So it doesn't know the difference. It's going to help us get there if we focus on it 100%, just like we do in a movie, like we're focused on that. Well, when we can do that with our future and with our goals, anything is possible. It's just doing it in that state of hypnosis and being able to train ourselves to do that. It's an awesome state to be in. It's very relaxing. It's very desirable. And so, yeah, at my training, I teach people how to do that, or when I coach them, it's awesome. Okay, here's another example. All right, well, I'm going to bring this up just because it's the world we're living in right now. TV and media can also, people are in trance when they're watching TV or they're listening to the radio. And right now with this, bug that's going around, this virus that's going around, and that's why I'm doing this in the first place on a recording. There's a lot of fear-mongering that can happen if people decide to accept those messages without filtering them with their own critical thinking. And so we just have to also be aware that the media knows how to use our emotions to get us to do or don't do something. So I'm just going to say that. Let's just leave it there. Just know that when we are in those states, when our critical faculty is open and we're in trance, if you don't know when you're in trance, and a lot of us, I didn't before I got trained in this, I would just allow these messages to go into my unconscious mind without really thinking that it was making a difference in my life. But now I'm very, very vigilant about what I allow in my unconscious mind. Another example is when you're driving. So have you ever gotten from point A to point B, and you get to point B and you're like, how in the world did I don't even remember driving. It's because you were in a deep trance. It's a program. You know how to drive, So again, does it matter what we're listening to on the radio or like music, podcasts, or talk radio, whatever it is that we're listening to? I listen to tons of Audible books. I am so clear about what I want in my mind now. And I filter that. I guard my mind like crazy. And I challenge you to do the same. Think about what kind of content is actually being put into your unconscious mind when you're in these states of trance. Because now you know when you are. You just didn't know. All right. Okay, let's see, where am I at? Okay, I want to talk about hypnosis a little bit, because I used to have a belief about hypnosis that it was mind control and it was just great stage entertainment. I'm going to assume that some of you have these same beliefs, because I think it's pretty common. So I'm going to clear up some misconceptions for you, okay? Dr. A.M. Krasner, the founder and director of the American Institute of Hypnotherapy, said, "There exists a pervasive belief that only the weak-minded and or gullible can be hypnotized. Actually, quite the opposite is true. People of above average intelligence who are capable of concentrating and those who have active, vivid imaginations make the best hypnotic subjects." Cool, right? Okay, here's another misconception that is that hypnosis is mind control, like I mentioned before. I used to think that. I used to think it was dangerous. Well, I just was uneducated. So, well, anyone who has experienced hypnosis, even if it is on a stage, will tell you that they were completely aware of everything going on. Our unconscious mind holds our values so tightly that it wouldn't let us do anything that went against our values or our beliefs. So if you were in a trance, even an induced one, and you knew you were in a trance, and someone like the hypnotist or whoever in the room would said to you, okay, now you're going to go rob a bank. Not only would you not rob a bank because it goes against your values, at least I hope it does, it would pull you right out of trance because it's just like not congruent with who you are. So, and let me tell you, I have been in trance, induced trance now, in hypnotic state, and I can honestly say that I know everything that's going on around me. I'm just focused on what I want to be doing, because hypnosis is just a matter of following directions. So if you can follow directions, you can be hypnotized, and you can choose to follow the directions or not. So once I learned that, I was like, oh, so this is something I want to do. This is something I want to train my mind to do. And I started to do that. I was like, this is awesome, because it's how I set goals now, and it's how I am able to change my programming. So being in a hypnotic state is a good thing. And it's a better thing when you are actually controlling it and knowing when you're in it, so that you can make sure that you're using it for good, for your own good. So if you're not controlling your mind, someone else is. I promise you that. All right. I'm getting off my script here. Okay, well, I'll just end here. Well, with this part, I'm just going to mention this. So just how can hypnosis help someone? I get asked this a lot. Well, those of us who've seen it work believe that it can literally help with anything, because who am I to draw the line and say what's possible and what's not? I am not going to do that. I just believe that anything is possible. And I truly, truly believe it, because I've seen it. I've seen so many things happen. I'll share some of my own stories. Okay, so what we need to do is reprogram our unconscious minds, which is done through hypnosis and becoming consciously aware of the unconscious, to uninstall beliefs and emotions that don't serve and install new beliefs and emotions that do serve. That's what I teach my clients and students how to do, and it's what I do myself. So right now, every day, you're hitting play on the recording that you've downloaded over the course of your life. Those recordings could have come from your early years or even after, but regardless, like I said, 95% of our day is run on programs. So if all we're doing is hitting play every day, it's no wonder things don't change. We have to stop that old recording and put in a new one. It's like when somebody prints something off on the computer, and it comes out of the printer and there's an error on the page. And to fix the error, somebody takes a pen or pencil and they scribble it out and they fix it. And they're like, okay, it's fixed. And then they hit print again, expecting a different outcome on the printer. Well, obviously, we know that the error isn't in the printer, it's in the software in the computer. So that's where the error has to change and get fixed in order for the outcome or behavior to be different. Okay. Who here has seen The Matrix? Okay. I confess I didn't watch The Matrix until I got involved in NLP. And that's because everyone in NLP was like, The Matrix is like real. And I was like, really? So I watched it and I'm like, whoa, there's a lot of metaphors in this show. And because in that show, it's talking about how everybody is programmed. Well, we are all programmed. So Bruce Lipton will actually say The Matrix is not fiction, it's a documentary. He's come right out and said that in many of his videos. And I have to agree with him. I mean, yeah, I'll just leave that there. But so what I do though, if you've watched it, you know that Neo gets offered either the red pill or the blue pill. And the red pill is basically he gets out of the matrix. He gets out of the programming. and he's able to see things totally with clear eyes. And so that's what I do in my training, is I offer you a symbolic red pill to be able to get a new set of glasses, and a new set of ears, if you will. You're just going to see and hear your world differently and yourself differently. And it's so fun. It is so fun to be able to, just see things for what they really are and not at face value, because you learn about words, power of words, and what people are really saying, and not what they are actually, what they think they're saying. Anyway, I digress. Let's go on. What would happen, ask yourself this, what would happen if you choose not to master your emotions? What happens if you decide to keep playing the same programming? Just think about those questions. How does the saying go? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, I have lived this. Oh my word, have I lived this. I have tried to change my mindset so many times with so many different approaches in my life. Most of them were other people's ideas, especially with my business. They were other people's ideas. And so I would go, oh, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And I would just keep treading water. I wasn't really getting anywhere. And so I just felt so stuck. And maybe some of you feel stuck in your lives now, or you have in the past, and it might be in a different area of your life. But for me, like, it was my business. And how does it feel to be stuck? It feels really crappy, right? It's not fun. People are designed to progress. And so when we feel stuck and stagnant, we feel all of these negative emotions, and it's just not a happy place to be. I used to find so many excuses for why I was stuck and why I wasn't more successful. Whether it was in my marriage or my career or my health, all of these areas of my life, I can find other reasons outside of myself for why I wasn't further along in my goals or my pursuits. There was always someone or something to blame. Some people blame the economy. Some people blame their religious institution. Or some people blame their parents or their genetics or a million other things. And some people are really good at blaming. And one thing that I learned that just shifted things for me, like in a big way, through NLP, was that our lives now are the sum total of all of our thoughts, our beliefs, and our experiences. And so when I learned to take 100% responsibility for my life and for where it was, then I could change it. I had 100% control to change it, because as long as I'm pointing to other people or other things outside of me, I was depending on them to make my life better. Well, that might never happen. Like, that person or that thing might never happen the way I want it, unless, and so I have to change me if I want the success that I want. So it's a huge shift in thinking. And at first it might feel a little bit like, but that person did that to me or whatever. We're talking, it's the sum total. And the more we can play this game with ourselves of, how did I create this in my life? Not in a way of like, not in a negative way, in a positive way. What belief is inside of me that would have caused this to happen? Then we can change that belief. We get to the root cause of that, and we change that programming so we can prevent that from happening again, or at least reacting the way we were probably reacting to that event or person. So because I had dived so deeply into NLP, I wasn't even really focusing on my essential oil business over the last year. I was, to a point, but I was so fascinated in all of this that I really dived into this, and that's where most of my attention was. But regardless, you know what? In a year, I went with my business, even though I wasn't totally focused on it like I even wanted to be, even though that's why I hired my coach and everything. I went from an average of 12 enrollments a month on my team to, just over a year ago, to 423 in February last month. Crazy, right? My average sales on my team-wide were $35,000 a month. And last month, my whole team my sales, the total sales of my team was 206,000. And my income has more than doubled in the last year. And it's just been like remarkable. Why didn't all this happen before? The only thing I can say is the one thing I did change last year was I cleaned up the junk. There were so many beliefs that were popping up that I realized, I didn't even know how to recognize them before I got NLP trained. Now I recognize them all day long. And so when they would come up, I would change it. I would get to the root cause. I use my techniques. I'm like, okay, that's not something I want to believe anymore. So let's change that and believe differently. And so I just did that a lot. I worked on myself a lot. I still am. And so that's the one thing I can say that I did different. Yeah. Pretty cool, right? I also stopped attending my Angel Mom group. I knew that my daughter Stella up there in heaven, she wanted me to be happy. I had a really personal experience that showed me that. I knew that in my heart. And so I felt like the thing for me to do was to stop going to this group and reliving the story. My story, I felt like, you know what? We can look at our stories in one of two ways. I choose to look at my story in totally positive ways because it was actually one of the most incredibly spiritual times in my life. I don't want to change that. Like, I'm grateful for that, you know? And so I just decided I just didn't need to go there anymore to the group. I was still friends with some of the women that I had come to love, and I still am to this day. But after I got trained in NLP, I actually took it a step further, because I hadn't been going to the group for years when I was introduced to NLP, but I realized that that I was still in the Facebook group, and I didn't even want the notifications anymore. That I was good with just not even having to see that pop up anymore. So I actually took myself out of that as well. And I just know that I'm going to see my daughter again, and she's so happy that I'm happy, and she's proud of me, and I'm proud of her. And I know I'm going to be with her, and I love that we can choose what to believe. I choose to believe that, and it gives me a ton of peace and comfort. And so I just think, wow, if everyone could just understand that we get to choose what we believe, then we would just believe good stuff, right? Like, let's just change the beliefs that don't work and just have good ones that do work. It's kind of simple. I also knew that my marriage was up to me. Remember, during this time, I had a little bit of, during the time of when Stella first passed away, my husband and I had some dark thoughts around that time. And I came across a quote that, because I was grieving, right? I was grieving, and he was grieving, and we grieved differently. And grief is its own thing. And so during that time, it was a struggle. And so I just knew that my thoughts were getting the best of me, and it wasn't going in a good direction. And so I came across this quote that said, "Choose your love, love your choice." And I thought, you know what? I do love him. I chose him, and I'm going to love my choice, and I'm going to love him. And I just started changing my thoughts and changing my emotions. And this was even before I knew NLP, right? I just it was intuitive in me that that's what I needed to do. And as I did that, things got better and better and better. And then fast forward, here we are, you know, I'm learning about NLP, and I wondered if I could apply NLP to some of the techniques I had learned there in my training to the intimacy problems in my marriage as well. That had stemmed from my first marriage, remember? I'm not going to give details. So let me just say that I didn't need to go talk about it to a therapist anymore, which I had obviously put off for 10 years anyway. I had learned that I could just change my programming around that and decide that I wanted something different in my relationship with my husband. And we would both tell you, if you ask him, he'll tell you the same thing, that we both turned a huge corner. It's been a big blessing in our marriage. And not even just in that area of our marriage, but overall. Our communication has massively improved. And we both have tools now that help us look inside ourselves. If the other person says something that causes like a negative charge inside, we look inside and go, okay, what's inside of me that I need to resolve to make sure I don't have that reaction again, instead of making it about the other person and attacking them. So it's a huge blessing, and it's made me a better mom. I just have learned how to be more objective in my life, and my emotions aren't running the show anymore. And then there's Bowen and his nails. So after I just got my basic practitioner training, I asked him, this was in May last year, so he was almost 8 at the time. So here we are, 5 years later after the initial meltdown, and we're still dealing with it. I really thought he would grow out of that, and he didn't. So I asked him if there is a technique that could help you not feel these bad feelings, emotions, around getting your nails cut. Would you be interested in changing that? And he said, yes. And so I said, well, let's do this then. And I did this technique with him where he changed the root cause of that decision. He went to the root cause and he changed that limiting decision. And in NLP, we call things limiting decisions or limiting beliefs. We actually say limiting decisions more than limiting beliefs, because there was a time that we actually unconsciously chose to believe that belief. And so when we change that decision, we change the belief automatically. It's kind of cool, right? So anyway, I did this with my son. It was a matter of minutes, and he changed the belief, and he decided that he wanted it to be different. And so we, after we got done, I said, are you ready to get your nails clipped? And he said, not yet. And I was like, okay, when do you want to do it? And he said, tomorrow. So I gave him that space. I honored that. And the next morning I said, hey, Bowen, what's today? And he said, we're clipping my nails. And he ran into the bathroom and he was all smiles, and I clipped his nails and he was smiling and laughing the whole time. And I was like, in shock. I'm trying to act totally cool and calm, right? But I'm like, holy cow, this is awesome. And literally I'm trying not to cry, because this was such a big deal in our lives. And I ran outside to tell my husband, like, this just happened. And he was like, oh my word, this is amazing. So yeah, it totally did work. So yeah, that was awesome. Oh, in fact, guess what? He even asked me to cut his nails, came to me and asked me to clip his nails about 2 months ago. And I never thought in a million years that would ever happen. So the miracles continue to flow. Okay, so now many of you already know, or you're starting to understand, that the unseen powers are how did I write this? That the most powerful forces in the universe are unseen powers. Just like gravity, electricity, and wind, we can't see them, but we can feel their power. And our unconscious minds also have this unseen power. We all have that inside of us to create whatever it is that we can imagine. So it would make sense for us then to learn how to use our power to master our emotions and create a life full of health, joy, and success, right? Emotions are tools of creation. So let's use them to create possibility, hope, joy, and success. I strongly believe that in this life we are meant to have joy, real joy. So if someone tells you that you have depression, choose to reject that, because nobody is meant to live their entire lives attached to a label. We can change that program and we can choose joy instead. Anxiety is also a program and a label, one that uses vivid imagination to conjure up all kinds of unwanted possibilities. Well, a vivid imagination is exactly the same thing that we use to reprogram the unconscious mind. So let's flip it and use it to our advantage instead. Once someone learns how to focus on what they want instead of what they don't want, they can easily overcome anxiety, and anyone can easily get anything that they want in life. Okay, we're going to do a little activity, all right? I want to show you how easy it is to change your emotion at will. Emotions are simply energy in motion, remember? They are constantly changing. In fact, I bet if you wanted to, you could feel a different emotion right this minute. This is an easy technique that I teach in my training. It's the fastest way to change your state, or that's what we call an NLP. We say state, which just means the way that you feel. You can change your state at will. Okay, so are you ready? All right. I want you to remember a time when you were totally laughing, like so hard. Maybe you were at an event or something where it was totally inappropriate to laugh, but you saw something so funny and it made it even funnier. Can you think of a specific time? Anytime. Then you were totally laughing, okay? Like I can totally remember right now. It's so funny. Okay, now, as you think about that time, can you go back? I want you to go back to that time right now. Go right back to that time. And I want you to see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel the feelings of totally laughing. Okay? Are you doing it? Yes! You're doing it right. Does it feel good? Feels good to laugh, right? And all you had to do was think of a memory. All right, come back to now. Pretty easy, right? Cool. You can do that with any emotion. Any emotion. Just do positive ones though, okay? All right. Dr. Joe Dispenza said, the only way we can change our lives is to change our energy, to change the electromagnetic field we are broadcasting. In other words, to change our state of being, we have to change how we think and how we feel. So how do we do that? Well, we use an advanced form of NLP called timeline therapy. Timeline therapy guides the client to get to the root cause of a limiting decision or negative emotion. We eliminate the following 5 negative emotions in this order: anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt. And 99% of the time, phobias are automatically eliminated by using this timeline therapy technique. And 1% of the time, we can use another technique that's specific to phobias, but basically, phobia is just a severe fear. So we can get rid of it when we get to the root cause of fear. It's pretty cool. So what I do when I'm working with a client that I'm coaching is I will have them float above their timeline and float above the event on their timeline so that the person isn't reliving anything in case there is trauma in their past. And so then they get whatever learning they need to learn in order to make the emotion or the limiting decision disappear. This is done in a light trance through hypnotic language, which integrates the conscious and the unconscious minds, so they begin to align and work together. So I want you to imagine your life without your emotions running the show. Imagine yourself living a life of peace and calmness, where you recognize easily your limiting decisions and you know how to change them effortlessly, where you feel confident, powerful, loving, joyful, and happy whenever and wherever you want to. It's a beautiful journey, isn't it? So, if you are ready for massive change and believe in taking massive action, my training is for you. This is only for people who are truly ready for this kind of change. My training is not for people who are comfortable with their problems. It's for those who know there is something better out there and they are ready to go after it, to make real, lasting, and permanent change, and are willing to take the action required to make that a reality. So here's what you'll get at my training. You'll learn how to identify your unconscious behaviors that aren't serving you. You'll learn how you can set goals so that you'll reach them every time. You'll learn how mindset is so much more than just being positive. It's a way of life that involves our thoughts, our words, our physiology, and our behavior. You'll learn all of the basic NLP techniques and timeline therapy techniques, and you'll get a chance to use all of them with other students also taking the course. And so during the course, you'll have your own breakthroughs every day. You'll have probably more than one a day. So you'll have a lot. You'll learn how to use the language of the unconscious mind to get whatever you want in life quickly and easily, because you'll get a new set of glasses where nothing will be the same again. And you'll earn 2 certifications to coach with NLP and timeline therapy, if that's your choice. Some people take my training because they just want to improve their lives and their families' lives. Others take it to enhance something that they're already doing in a different modality. And others just want to coach this, straight up coach people in NLP and timeline therapy. And all of those are options, and they're all awesome. Another option that I'm working on right now is I'm creating an online course, which will have a number of video lessons related to some of the pivotal topics that I teach about in my training. And it's full of tons of value, especially if you want to learn more before taking my whole training. So additionally, the cost of the online course, you can actually put that towards the cost of the training should you decide to take the training afterwards. So it's a pretty good deal. Because I'm still in the middle of creating it, I'm going to be selling this at half price right now, and that price will be available until April 30th. So you have the 30 days to watch all of these classes, because I don't know what day you're going to get to mine. And then after you see it, just reach out to me. I have a PDF flyer with all of the details of prices and everything, with my training and my online courses and everything, and coaching even. Well, coaching detail, those details, you got to reach out to me. So my online training course will be available May 1st. So it's half off until April 30th, and then you'll have access starting May 1st, and it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. So like I said, all the deals that are specific to you who are attending the conference are on my flyer. So check out that PDF. And I also have a bookmark, which that was my handout for my booth, which I will talk about in my other video. So there's that PDF as well that you can print off if you like. So I would love for you to ask yourself this question. What would happen if I choose to master my emotions today? What would happen if I choose not to master my emotions today? It's your choice. We have free will. We all have free will to do whatever we choose To end, I want to share one more personal story, and then I have a little thing at the end after this. But I want to share my a really major moment for me in my journey over the past year. 1 year ago, I woke up with excruciating pain in my lower back. And we're all safe and healthy, right? I just want to throw that out there. But I had this pain, and it was the kind where I couldn't bend over to put my child in his crib without it just being excruciating, or even get him out of his crib. Like, just any kind of bending over movement was just really painful. And it was starting to really impede on my daily activities. And I wasn't able to exercise like I normally did, and all kinds of other problems. So I was frustrated. I used my essential oils. I went to my chiropractor. I got massages, and I was doing all the things, and it was not going away. And as I was opening my mind up to NLP, and I was talking to my trainer who was going to train me, he talked about this technique that gets rid of chronic neck and back pain in minutes. And I was like, holy cow, really? Fast forward, I'm at the master practitioner training in August. So I've been dealing with this pain now for 5 months. And when he asked for a demo, I was like, me, please. So he chose 2 of us. There was another guy there who had like shoulder neck pain, and his pain was gone within 4 minutes. And he'd had that pain since, oh my gosh, over 10 years. It was amazing. And then it was my turn, and I got up there and I started releasing my emotions, and my pain was getting lower and lower. And then I was able to finally get to the root cause. It took me 20 minutes to get all the way to the bottom of my pain. There was just this underlying unconscious belief about trusting myself that I was still hanging on to. And when I was able to recognize that and let it go, the pain went away like that. It was, do you hear that snap? Not very loud. Anyway, it was incredible. I cried. Well, I was crying the whole time because I was like, go away. And then when it finally went away, I was like, it went away. So it was so emotional, but I was so grateful. And I just thought, whoa, if that could happen for me, something like this, you know what? Right after my pain went away, you know what I felt? I felt like anything is possible, and that I can do anything. And you know what? So can you. So can you. Anything is possible. I want to end with this story. It's about the 2 wolves. This is an old Cherokee chief teaching his grandson about life. He said, "A fight is going on inside me," he said to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between 2 wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, self-doubt, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too." The grandson then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old chief simply replied, "The one you feed." Thank you. I'll see you soon.